Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're plunging into the storied heart of Middle-earth. We're going to unpack a character whose journey is far more complex, really, and transformative than you might realize. Gimli, son of Glóin,
That's right.
often seen as, the gruff warrior, maybe even comic relief sometimes.
hmm
Our mission today is to unearth the truly profound insights and maybe some surprising facts about this iconic dwarf. We'll be drawing from Tolkien's own meticulous writings to reveal his remarkable depth. You're going to walk away, I think, with a completely renewed appreciation for him.
Absolutely. And while, other characters maybe get more of the spotlight, Gimli's narrative arc, when you really dig into it, it's one of the richest in the entire saga.
Really?
Yeah, it's a powerful demonstration of reconciliation, profound personal growth, and just breaking down these ancient biases. We're going to explore his full journey, often going against maybe the common perceptions you hold, especially those shaped by, well, the movies.
Okay, let's unpack this then, right from the very beginning. Gimli, son of Glóin, he is a proud member of the noble House of Durin.
Yes.
Directly descended from Durin the First, the legendary founder of Khazad, Moria. But why is that lineage, that specific family, why is it so profoundly significant to understanding who Gimli becomes?
Well, his lineage is absolutely central. You can't really understand Gimli without it. He was born in the year 2879 of the Third Age.
Mhm.
Now think about this. At the time of the quest of Erebor, when his father Glóin went with Thorin Oakenshield.
Right, the Hobbit.
Exactly. Gimli himself was considered too young at 62 years old to join that dangerous mission.
62, too young.
Too young for a dwarf warrior
Yeah.
on a quest like that. It immediately highlights, the longevity of their race, and it sets a baseline for just how much life experience he already had before his big adventure even began.
So, okay, fast forward a few decades then. How does this, relatively young dwarf end up at the pivotal Council of Elrond? By then, he's what, 138 or 139? He and Glóin travel to Rivendell. It wasn't just a social call, was it?
No, not at all. They were seeking Elrond's counsel, yes, but also, crucially, to warn Bilbo.
Warn him.
About what? A chilling messenger from Sauron Tolkien hints it was likely a Nazgul had come to King Dain in Erebor.
Wow.
Yeah, offering immense rewards. Even the realm of Moria itself. All in exchange for information about Bilbo and, of course, the One Ring.
Ugh.
So this was a dire moment, a huge threat.
Absolutely dire. And that leads right into his selection for the Fellowship, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah.
Given the urgency of the warning they brought and him being basically the only young fighting-age dwarf present at the council,
Ah, okay.
Gimli was chosen. He was chosen to represent his entire race in the Fellowship of the Ring.
Yeah.
And it was quite deliberate, Tolkien makes that clear. 9 walkers chosen to counter the 9 Nazgul.
A direct counter.
Exactly. It cemented his place as a vital participant in the fight against Sauron, giving the dwarves a direct voice where they might otherwise have been, isolated.
So the Fellowship journey begins, and this is where we really start to see the complex layers of Gimli's character emerge, I think.
Definitely.
Right from the start, he showed this deep, almost instinctual knowledge of mountains. He impressed Samwise Gamgee, even Gandalf, identifying peaks by their secret Kuzul names, like Barazanbar for Caradhras. What did that early detail tell us about the dwarves and Gimli himself that maybe even his companions missed at first?
Oh, it was much more than just knowing names. It instantly established his connection to this ancient wisdom, this profound link to the very earth. It subtly challenged any initial thoughts the others might have had about dwarves just being, gold-hungry or insular.
Right, the stereotypes.
Exactly. This intimate knowledge of the mountains, using their secret tongue, showed his deep cultural roots and inherent mastery of their domain. It spoke of generations of knowledge passed down through the House of Durin.
So then they try to cross Caradhras and fail.
Oh.
And Gimli finds himself siding with Gandalf about entering Moria. He had a really strong opinion on this. What was driving that decision, considering, the obvious dangers?
Well, 2 things, really. One was his immense curiosity, almost an obsession, about the fate of Balin's colony.
Ah, Balin, his cousin.
Exactly. Erebor hadn't heard from them in years. And this deep longing to find out what happened to his kin, that was actually the other main reason he and his father journeyed to Rivendell in the first place, even before Sauron's messenger showed up.
So it wasn't just tactical.
Not at all. It was deeply personal.
Yeah.
A quest fueled by loyalty to his lost family.
And it wasn't long before that That classic tension between elves and dwarves flared up.
Right at the doors of Durin.
Yeah, the first recorded spat between Gimli and Legolas happened right there, arguing about whose race was really to blame for the friendship fading away. It's a pretty telling snapshot of where they started, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. That exchange. A stark reminder of the deep-seated grievances, centuries of them.
Yeah.
Both were passionate, both felt their people had been wronged.
Yeah.
Yet, despite that initial friction, Gimli really, he had some shining moments inside Moria. He'd never actually set foot in Khazad-dûm before, believe it or not.
Never.
Never.
Right.
But his innate dwarven architectural sense, it just kicked in. He walked right up front with Gandalf, counseling the wizard through uncertain paths. He was navigating by feel, almost an ancestral memory of stone and structure, not direct experience.
That's fascinating. But then came the tragedy, the inevitable discovery. Gimli was the first to find Belin's tomb in the Chamber of Miserable, to realize his cousin was dead. What was the emotional weight of that moment for him?
Oh, the despair was just raw, so poignant in the book. And when the Balrog Durin's Bane finally appeared...
The ancient evil.
Yes, Gimli drops his axe, puts his face in his hands. He knew instantly what it was. The ancient terror that destroyed the great dwarf kingdom had returned. It was this moment of profound ancestral grief and fear.
Yeah, he rallied.
He did. Despite that terror, he rallied. And actually, in a moment people sometimes overlook, he helped lead the others over the bridge of Khazad-dûm after Gandalf fell, showing this incredible resilience, born of necessity, and that deep sense of responsibility.
After escaping Moria, that harrowing escape, Gimli insisted on visiting Khaledzarum, the Mirror Mere.
A sacred place.
He took Frodo to the lake, told him the legend of Durin the First, seeing that crown of stars reflected in the water during the day, the sign to found Khazad-dûm. And here's where it gets really captivating. Gimli and Frodo themselves saw Durin's crown in the reflection. What does that shared moment signify? Connecting them to this ancient, sacred, dwarvish past.
It's just dripping with spiritual significance. For Gimli, it's a reaffirmation of his heritage, a direct personal link to the very origins of his people.
Right.
And for Frodo, and really for us reading it, it's a glimpse into the hidden, mystical side of dwarven culture, something often obscured by their more, practical image.
Beyond just craft and stone.
Exactly. It underscores this deep, almost magical connection to their history and the world. It elevates the Mirror Mere from just a pretty lake to a place of shared, almost divine experience.
But the real turning point for Gimli, and you can argue for dwarf-elf relations in the whole Third Age, happens in Lothlorien.
Oh yes, Lothlorien.
Initially, when they reach the Elven realm, Gimli is stubborn. He refuses to be blindfolded. He sees it as a huge embarrassment, an insult.
Deeply insulting to his honor.
He only agrees when Aragorn steps in and declares everyone, including Legolas, will be blindfolded. What was the significance of that initial resistance? And what changed him once he was actually inside?
Well, the refusal was pure dwarvish pride, and centuries of suspicion baked in. He saw the blindfold as a symbol of distrust, echoing all those past grievances.
Understandable, maybe.
Perhaps. But once inside, Lady Galadriel just utterly disarmed him. She showed him profound sympathy. She even used ancient dwarvish names very few outside their own race would ever know or use.
That must have stunned him.
It was a deep act of respect, of understanding. And Tolkien calls it an infatuation for an elf, an almost unheard of feeling for a dwarf. It truly blossoms when she looks into his eyes and he sees love and understanding. It just shattered his preconceptions, not by force, but through pure empathetic connection.
And that connection leads to this extraordinary moment. When Galadriel offers gifts to the Fellowship, Gimli doesn't ask for gold or jewels, which you might expect from a dwarf stereotype. He asks for a single strand of her golden hair.
A single strand.
Which was a request with immense historical and symbolic weight.
Oh, immense. And this is where Tolkien's wider lore gives us this truly fascinating detail. Galadriel had previously refused the exact same request from Valinor.
Valinor, creator of the Silmarils?
The very same. She refused him 3 times. She perceived a darkness in him, a desire to possess beauty he couldn't create himself. But Gimli, he asks humbly, just 1 strand out of pure admiration.
And she gives him?
She gives him 3, and foretells that gold would have no dominion over him. He was different. Gimli, just completely moved, promises to set it in imperishable crystal as a pledge of goodwill between the mountain and the wood until the end of days.
Wow, that's huge.
It's an inversion of all expectations, a profound blessing that highlights his pure heart, his shift away from just material wealth.
And the impact on him was immediate and visible. He openly wept when leaving Lothlorien,
Yes, he did.
saying something like, the light was even more dangerous than the darkness he had originally feared. That experience didn't just soften his heart, it cemented his friendship with Legolas. He earned that rare title among elves, elf friend. This wasn't just a casual bond forming, was it?
No, not at all. It was a true healing, a personal reconciliation that foreshadowed a much greater potential for unity between their peoples. His tears weren't just sadness, they were like a release from centuries of inherited animosity, a recognition of beauty and grace he'd been taught to distrust his whole life.
That phrase, the light was even more dangerous than the darkness, it perfectly captures that overwhelming transformative power of encountering pure goodness, pure acceptance when you weren't expecting it.
Exactly. It changed him fundamentally.
And this newfound friendship, it gets forged pretty quickly in the fires of war, doesn't it, after the fellowship breaks. Gimli joins Aragorn and Legolas. They become the three hunters, tirelessly tracking Saruman's Uruks across Rohan. It's incredible how quickly that trust developed.
It really speaks volumes about the depth of their characters, all three of them. And that loyalty Gimli felt towards Galadriel once it was forged. It was fierce.
There's that amazing exchange with Eomer, right?
Incredible moment when Eomer of Rohan, meets them and he calls Galadriel a net weaver and sorcerer.
Oof, bad move.
Very bad move. Gimli just flies into a rage, declares, "You speak evil of that which is fair beyond the reach of your thought, and only little wit can excuse you."
Strong word.
Eomer's eyes blaze, you can imagine. But what's truly remarkable, the proof of their bond. Legolas, without a second thought, draws his bow to defend Gimli.
An elf defending a dwarf's honor over words about an elf queen.
Exactly. A powerful, unspoken testament to how far they'd come since arguing at the doors of Durin. It proved their bond was real and deep.
And when Gandalf the White reveals himself, he even passes on a message specifically for Gimli from Galadriel.
He does. Lock-bearer, she calls him.
A bearer, right.
Where thou goest, my thought goes with thee. But have a care to lay thine axe to the right tree. How did that message and that little playful warning land with Gimli?
It just completely heartened him. He sang loudly and dwarvish, swung his axe around, ready for anything. It was a sign he was remembered, that his transformation was seen, that he was still under her thought, her care.
And the right tree line.
A clear nod to his outburst with Eomer.
Right. Absolutely. Shows her subtle humor, her wisdom, and his instant appreciation for it, his reaction. It shows his newfound ability to maybe laugh at himself a bit, even heading into battle.
Then comes Helm's Deep. Gimli fights valiantly, even saves Eomer's life at one point.
He does.
And here, amidst all that chaos, he starts his famous friendly rivalry with Legolas over kill counts.
The kill count, yes.
Eventually winning 42-41. It's such a great piece of shared camaraderie in the middle of a horrific battle, isn't it?
It is. And it's a very sort of dwarvish way to build that camaraderie, that playful one-upmanship. But it really solidifies their trust and respect. But beyond the humor, something else profound happens during that battle for Gimli.
Go on.
He and others are forced back into the glittering caves of Aglarond.
The caves behind the deeping wall.
Yes, and Gimli is just completely overwhelmed by their beauty. He describes them so poetically to Legolas later, saying things like, "No dwarf could be unmoved by such loveliness. We would tend these glades of flowering stone, not quarry them."
Tend these glades of flowering stone.
That's beautiful. And it's a side of Gimli that, as you hinted earlier, the film adaptations often miss, right? This deep, almost artistic appreciation for natural beauty beyond just gems and gold.
Absolutely. The films, they capture his bravery, his loyalty, sure, but they often lean really heavily into him as comic relief.
The tossing, the height jokes.
Exactly. Sometimes at the expense of his character's cultural depth, his gravitas. They touch on his reverence for Galadriel briefly, maybe hint at his poetic side, his awe for the caves. But the sources, Tolkien's writing, it has this emotional resonance, this profound impact that the films just don't quite capture in the same way.
That image of a dwarf who you normally associate with hacking rock, talking about tending glades of flowering stone, it's incredibly powerful. It counters the stereotype completely.
And that awe he felt directly led to a significant pact between him and Legolas.
Right, the post-war promise.
Gimli made Legolas promise if they survived the war, Legolas had to visit the Glittering Caves. And in return, Gimli promised he would visit Fangorn Forest. Despite his earlier fear of it.
Despite his earlier fear, it wasn't just idle chat. It was a promise born of this new mutual understanding, this desire to share the wonders of their respective worlds.
truly cementing their bond beyond just being comrades in arms.
Gimli's steadfastness, his core integrity, really shines again in Isengard. When Saruman tries to sway King Theoden and the others with his incredibly persuasive magical voice.
That voice could charm almost anyone.
But not Gimli. He was completely unmoved, declared Saruman's words untrustworthy, called his offer of help nothing but ruin. And that blunt declaration actually broke Saruman's composure, his spell on the others. Why was Gimli, out of all of them, so immune?
It's really a testament to his innate dwarven honesty, maybe, and the clarity of purpose he'd developed through his experiences. Dwarves, by their nature, Tolkien suggests, are resistant to that kind of manipulation. They value truth, concrete action.
Less susceptible to smooth words. Exactly. And Gimli's transformation had only deepened his moral compass. So he was just impervious to Saruman's subtle lies. His blunt, unwavering assessment was like a splash of cold water, breaking the enchantment for everyone else.
And he showed immense courage again, overcoming his own deep-seated fear on the paths of the dead.
Oh, that was a huge test for him.
He was initially very reluctant to enter that dreaded place. What pushed him forward through that darkness? It wasn't just duty, was it?
It was partly duty, but what really tipped the balance? The thought of a dwarf being bested underground by an elf.
The rivalry strikes again.
It was the power of their friendly rivalry, honestly. A challenge to his pride and also a testament to his burgeoning friendship with Legolas. He couldn't let Legolas go in alone or show fear when the elf didn't. His knees were literally shaking, Tolkien writes, but he plunged in. It shows how loyalty and maybe a bit of pride can help overcome even deep-seated racial fears.
Later at Pelargir, there's that poignant moment when Legolas hears the gulls and feels the call of the sea, that ancient elven longing for the west.
Yeah, the sea longing.
And Gimli expresses this real concern, the sadness. He says something like, "If all the fair folk take to the havens, it will be a duller world for those who are doomed to stay." He knows he might lose his friend. That reveals a very human, very vulnerable side to Gimli, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It highlights the profound depth of his affection for Legolas by this point. It's not just about battle comradeship anymore. It's a tender acknowledgement of the potential pain of loss. He recognizes Legolas's destiny is different, and he realizes his own life will genuinely be poor without his elven friend. It's a truly moving moment that shows just how far he's journeyed from that suspicious dwarf at Moria's gate.
And of course, before any potential farewells, Gimli continued to be incredibly brave. Fought valiantly at the Battle of the Pelennor Fields, then again at the desperate Battle of the Morannon, right at the Black Gate.
Right beside his friends, providing crucial support, turning the tide in key moments.
And after the ring is destroyed, that moment of chaos and relief, it's Gimli who finds Pippin amidst the fallen orcs and trolls, alive, but bruised and buried. A loyal friend right to the very end of the conflict.
Always looking out for the Fellowship members.
So, the war is over. Sauron is defeated. What becomes of Gimli after all this? What's his enduring legacy?
Well, first, at Aragorn's coronation, there's this wonderful, heartwarming reconciliation.
With Erebor?
With Eomer. Eomer humbly begs Gimli's pardon for his harsh words about Galadriel back in Rohan.
Does Gimli grant it?
He does. Eomer still maintains Arwen is the fairest lady, but Gimli is content with the apology. They part as friends. And that reconciliation isn't just a minor footnote, is it? It's a powerful symbol.
Of healing, maybe?
Exactly. It embodies the healing of those ancient rifts, not just between two individuals, but between whole peoples, Rohirrim and Dwarves, indirectly touching on Elves too. It shows that respect and understanding can overcome historical prejudice.
And after the celebrations?
After the war, Gimli returns to the Glittering Caves, Helm's Deep, and fulfilling that vision he had, he founds a new dwarven colony there. He becomes its lord.
Lord of the Glittering Caves. Has a nice ring to it.
Doesn't it? His people worked to restore and enhance the caves, creating wonders that, Tolkien writes, rivaled even the works of Erebor. They transformed them into places of incredible beauty and thriving culture, not just a fortress holdfast.
And his dwarves were pretty instrumental in the rebuilding efforts across Middle-earth too, weren't they?
Hugely. They worked very closely with Gondor and Rohan. Most famously, they rebuilt the Great Gate of Minas Tirith, which had been destroyed by the Witch King.
With what material?
With mithril and steel, a gate stronger and more beautiful than the original. Quite the contribution to the restored kingdom.
That's incredible. Talk about leaving your mark.
And here's something truly remarkable, a rare act that just profoundly highlights his transformation, his commitment to this new era of unity.
What's that?
While he was in Minas Tirith, likely helping with the gate, He reunited with Merry and Pippin. And he did something extraordinary. He broke centuries of dwarven secrecy.
Oh.
He shared detailed histories of his people, genealogies, lore, specifically so they could be included accurately in the Red Book of Westmarch.
The book the hobbits were compiling.
Precisely. This was an unprecedented act of trust for a dwarf. Sharing deeply guarded knowledge like that, it just underscores his profound personal growth, his desire to genuinely bridge those cultural gaps, to ensure his people's story was part of the larger narrative of Middle-earth's victory and future.
Wow. From refusing a blindfold to sharing secret lore, that's quite the arc. And his story concludes with the most unprecedented journey of all, doesn't it?
It really does. In the year 120 of the Fourth Age, when Gimli is old, 262 years old,
Still going strong.
he sails west to Valinor with Legolas.
He goes with Legolas to the Undying Lands.
Yes, becoming the only dwarf ever recorded to set foot in the Undying Lands.
How is that even possible?
Tolkien suggests it was likely granted through the intercession of Galadriel herself, a final, ultimate symbol of grace, connection, and the complete reconciliation he came to embody. The ultimate reward for the elf friend.
So, when we look back at Gimli, considering especially the way he's sometimes portrayed, particularly in the films.
Yeah. The simplification.
Yeah. While Peter Jackson's films certainly showed him as brave, loyal, they did often lean heavily into him being the comic relief, didn't they?
They did. His height, his gruffness, the rivalry with Legolas, it was often exaggerated for comedic effect. Sometimes, frankly, at the expense of the character's cultural depth and dignity. Scenes of him struggling physically or being tossed, those were in the books.
And those nuances we talked about, the reverence for Galadriel, the poetic language, the sheer awe for the glittering caves, they get a bit lost, don't they?
They're touched upon, maybe, but they lack the deep emotional resonance, the profound impact those moments have in Tolkien's writing. The films present a simpler, perhaps more immediately accessible Gimli, but they miss some of the richness.
So what is Gimli's true symbolic significance in Tolkien's mythology?
He is just this incredibly powerful symbol of reconciliation, of unity. His journey from being this proud, deeply suspicious dwarf to becoming someone who literally sails to the Undying Lands alongside an elf. It embodies the healing of those ancient bitter rifts, the breaking of generational biases.
It's a huge statement in a world often defined by those ancient grudges.
Absolutely. And Tolkien uses him to show something deeper, I think. Gimli represents the potential for all peoples, even though stereotyped as hard-hearted or materialistic like dwarves often were, to experience grace, spiritual awakening, profound change.
He actively refutes the stereotypes.
He does. His character shows that love, honor, loyalty, friendship, these things transcend race and tradition. His story reminds us that greatness doesn't lie in stature or gold, but in loyalty, wisdom, and crucially, the courage to change, the courage to see beyond prejudice and embrace the unexpected.
And there you have it. The truly transformative journey of Gimli, son of Glóin, the dwarf who challenged every expectation, forged the most unlikely and powerful bonds, and ultimately sailed into legend. He really did redefine what it meant to be a dwarf in Middle-earth.
He certainly did. And in reflecting on his journey, it leaves us with a truly provocative thought, maybe for you to ponder. What enduring ancient rifts in our own world, our own lives, might be healed by an unexpected friendship? Or simply by choosing to look beyond first impressions and those ingrained biases, just as Gimli eventually did. Where can we find grace and transformation, maybe in the most unexpected of places, just by opening our hearts and minds a little wider?